Our presenter today for Power BI in 15 minutes is Mike Hammond, one of our solutions architects here at Infinity Infosystems. Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you everyone for joining today, taking time out of your schedules. So we're going to jump right into the presentation today, and this is our Unleash the Potential webinar series. So as Matt mentioned today, we're going to talk a little bit about Power BI in 15 minutes, and it's something that I kind of like to talk about where it takes you from what we call zero to hero in like 15 minutes. So and when I say that, it's not that any one of us and what we do would be a zero, but it's literally taking nothing, starting from scratch, and being able to create something that's of value and be the hero of the day, if you will, by doing so. Okay. So with that, how we're going to do that is we're going to connect to CRM and we're going to create a Power BI dashboard in 15 minutes. So today I'm going to be Dan, and Dan has been asked by his sales manager to create a dashboard because I've got some pretty great Excel skills, and that's really all I need to be able to do something very powerful with Power BI. So ultimately what we're going to see today is a fast and easy development for dashboards. We're going to be able to quickly, simply, and easily share that and ultimately become the hero of the day. Okay, so let's get started with the demo. All right, so I'm in my Excel application, and the first thing I want to do is to be able to connect to my CRM system. Okay, so the way that we do that with Dynamic CRM is we start in the customizations area. Okay, so either you or an administrator will have to come into this area. So you go into Settings and then come into Customizations, and then you select this Developer Resources area, which is going to give you a few different URLs. And the important one that you need to be able to connect to Power BI is this last one. It's this OData, okay, and that's what we're going to use to connect. So I just like to click on it because what it'll do is it'll show you that it's actually working, and then you can just copy it right out of the address bar there. Okay? Now we flip back to our Excel, and today you just select this OData feed. Now there's a release coming out very soon where you'll actually see Dynamic CRM as another one of these connectors. But for now, just select OData feed, and what you're going to get is a nice little pop-up here where you can paste in that URL that we just copied. So it's now connecting to the Dynamic CRM database. If it doesn't know who I am, it will prompt me for my credentials. So I logged in a little earlier, so it's not going to prompt me again. But what you would then see if this is the first time you've logged in for the day, it'll prompt you for your login credentials. It's now using those credentials to connect to CRM and pulling in the CRM data, and that's actually pulling in the structure at the moment. So it's reading all the tables and all the fields and all the information that's coming out of CRM system. Now notice here that I can also pull from other data sources. Okay, so I can pull in from websites, from social sites, from Azure, the data sources, from all kinds of different databases, from SQL Server to Oracle to DB2, you name it, there's pretty much a connector out there. Okay. So that's the beautiful thing about Power BI is I can now mix and match multiple different data sources into a single dashboard. So we're just going to stick with the CRM dashboard today, but we're going to select from 3 different tables. So we want to start with our account table, and we're going to scroll down. We're going to pull in our opportunity table, and then we want one more. Let's just call this grab our user table, which is the system user table. Okay, so if I hover, I get a nice little preview so that I can see is this the data that I'm actually interested in and want to pull in. So for now, let's just go ahead and we're now going to edit the account data. So before we pull it into the dashboard, we want to select really what we're interested in reporting on. Highlight the table that I want and then the little edit button, and now we get our query editor. So this is now using Power Query to be able to connect to and pull in those data sources. So once it now pulls in all of the tables, we don't need to report on every single table, right, and every single field in those tables. So what we want to do is we want to choose which fields that we want to build the dashboard on. Okay? So I just simply select Choose Columns, and now I can just very quickly and easily pick all of the columns that I want to report on. So we get this little chooser here. Okay. So I select this deselect there. Notice how all the checkboxes turn off. And now I just want to start searching for the fields that I want. So I want to start to pull in account ID, and I want owner ID, so I want to see who those sales reps are that are associated with those. Let's pull in some address data. So I'm going to pull in address 1. So we're going to pull in, let's just do line 1. Let's do the zip code. Let's do the city, and we'll pull in one more. Let's pull in the country. Okay. And now let's pull in another field. Let's do the website URL. Okay. So that's probably good for now. Let's go in and clean up the rest of this data. So now you'll see that a lot of these columns are going to disappear, and it's just going to be those columns that I just now selected. Okay, now in Power BI, sometimes you're going to see a field or a column, and again, this is Excel, so you're seeing rows and columns, which was what makes this so easy. If you see it where it says record, you actually need to tell it there's different data sets that are associated with that field. So behind the scenes, you can pull in the name or the ID. In this case, I just want to pull in the ID, and that'll become clear here in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to pull in the customer ID field, and it looks like all the rest are fine. But now I also want to transform some data. So I'm just going to create a new column, and I'm going to do that by just duplicating an existing column of data. And again, this is going to become clear in a couple of minutes as well. Okay, so while I'm in here, I want to start to clean up the data. Okay, so I just literally double-click on those fields, and let's just call that the rep field. I'm going to leave that. Let's call this one the zip code field, and let's call this one line, just address. There's zip, and here's address, and then we're going to go country, okay, address, country, and then we'll do city, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do with that duplicated column here now next. So let's go in and do country, and this, I want to call this total accounts, because in my dashboard, one of the things that my manager asked me for was for each stage of an opportunity, I want to know how many customers or potential customers, how many accounts that we have for each of those stages of opportunities. So we're going to call this total accounts. So we're done with cleaning up that one. Actually, let's get city cleaned up there just so that looks pretty as well. And then we'll be done. And then we're going to do the same thing for our opportunity data. And so once I've cleaned up all the columns and everything and it looks the way that I want it to look, I just select Apply and Close. Now we're going to do the same thing for opportunity. So I select the table that I want. I'm going to select the Edit button. Now it pulls up the query editor. Now notice so far I've not written a single line of SQL. I've not even mentioned SQL until now, right? I've also not mentioned that other word, fetch XML, right? So usually when you say either of those two words to, you know, non-super technical people, their eyes start to glaze over, right? So that's the other, one of the other powerful things about Power BI is you can do so much without ever having to consider what the SQL queries are or what the fetch XML query language or data is. So again, we're going to choose some columns here. In this case, we're going to pick the customer ID field. So first turn them off because you don't want all of them, and now search for the ones that we want. So we're going to pick customer ID and owner ID. Customer ID. Let's do owner ID. And now let's do some estimated dates. So we're going to do estimated close date and estimated revenue. Let's do the step name or stage. And how about the name of the opportunity? And let's do the opportunity ID and maybe the owner ID. Boom. Okay, so that's good enough for now. So now we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to just clean these up a tiny bit. I'm not going to clean these up as much, but I do want to add a couple of little things here. So again, we see that there's a record column, so I need to clean that one up. And again, I just want the ID field there. And we'll just leave the rest of those. Those make enough sense that we know what they are. Let's do this with the customer ID field. Again, I only want the ID field for now. The estimated revenue. We just want the values from the estimated revenue. So that's the only one there, and we can select that. And now I'm going to do just like I did in the account ID. I'm going to select the column here, and I duplicate that column. And then I can also clean up this data a little bit more by doing what's called a transform. So notice in the date field that it's got date and time. Well, I don't really need the date and time, so right now really all I want is just the date. Because I don't care about the time in this particular dashboard. Now go over and we're going to change this column name to total ops. So there we've got our reporting fields for our opportunities. So apply and close. Now we're going to do one last one here, which is our user table. So we want to pull in the username and maybe their title. We could pull in territory and whatever else we want to from that system table, but we're just going to keep that fairly clean. So let's go ahead and pull in and select choose columns. Okay, and now name. There we go. First name, last name, full name. Let's do title. And let's do system user ID, and that's good. Okay, so looks like we don't have any fields that are showing as record, so we don't have to do any other cleanup. And let's apply and close that. Okay, now I've created the filters, right? I've created what fields I want in my count, opportunity, and system table. Now I need to load that data. So I just select the little load button. And now what that's doing is that's now pulling in, that essentially behind the scenes has created the SQL queries, if you will. But all I've done is just point and click, right? So I don't have to know all the complicated inner joins, outer joins, all that. So it's kind of doing all those things for me. So it's now reading in the account tables, reading in the opportunity tables, and reading in the system user tables. Okay? And so as soon as it's loaded all the tables, I'll get some numbers here, and it'll tell me how many records are in each of those. So now, the next thing we need to do is go in and create relationships for those tables. And we do that in Power Pivot. Okay, so we go over to our Power Pivot, and I just simply select Manage. And this is where I tell it how the tables are related. Okay? So I've got 3 disconnected tables at the moment. Okay? So I want to now connect those 3. And so I go into, this is how I like to do it. It's easy because it's visual and it's graphic. And so from here, I can just kind of expand these a little bit. And now it's like, okay, how do these tables relate to one another? So I'm just going to drag and drop this over to that, because that's the rep ID field. And over here, notice I've got it as the owner ID field. So just simply drag and drop. Now, account ID, I want to relate that to customer ID. Now, that creates that relationship. And then we want one more where we want to create, looks like that one didn't take, so I'll go system to owner. Okay. So there we go. So I've now just related these 2 tables together. If I hover them, it'll kind of tell me which of those fields are related. Okay? So that's all I have to do here. So now we're ready to start the visualizations. I've got my data, and I've got my relationships to my table. So now we're going to go into our Power View. This is where we get into the visualizations. What I want to do is I want to create a dashboard, an opportunity dashboard, and I want to see some sales reps by stage name is kind of my first. Okay? So right now, to give us a little more room, I'm just going to close that window there. It doesn't do anything other than just hide the window. So first we're going to give this dashboard a name. And now I'm going to pretty it up a little bit. And so we're just going to do some dragging of those columns. And there. Now we're going to start pulling in some fields here. So remember, one of the fields I did is this total accounts. So I'm just going to drag and drop that over. Now first it's just going to show me all the data. But what I want to do is I only want a count there. So I come back over to this right-hand side and I say, give me a distinct count of the account records. Okay? Now I want to do the same thing for my opportunity records. So now let's create a nice little table here. So I want to do a table by rep name. So let's do expand that and do the full name of the rep. And I want to do the step or stage name. And I want to do the estimated revenue. Now we're going to put these where we want them. And I want to make this into a little bit more of a, I don't know, kind of a row column. I want to pretty that up. So I'm going to turn this into what we call a matrix table. So the matrix table now is going to show us and do some summarization of the data. But you know what? I want step name to be the columns. Okay, so I just come over to here and I drag step name down into columns. And now I've got a nice little pretty chart of step names by sales rep. So I've got sales rep by stage name by total estimated revenue. Okay? Now I want to use that as the basis for an additional chart. Okay? So we're going to just copy that and paste that down here. And I want to turn this into what's called a card table. So now we've got our card table. But you know what? I don't want rep here because I've got rep up there. So I want to add a couple different fields here. And one of those fields I want to add are the close probability. So I drag and drop that down. And let's just do maybe the total customers. Okay, so I'm going to scroll to total customers here. And let's just do maybe total ops there. Okay, how's that? And now I don't need the full name here, so I'm just going to remove that. And I want the average probability. So I just select the little drop down and I say, you know what, I want the average probability here. Okay, so now what you'll see is we've got the total opportunities by stage, by estimated revenue, by average probability, by total count. Okay, so now one other thing we want to add is we want to add another chart here. And this chart we want to have the step name and the estimated revenue. And I want that as a nice little bar chart. So let's drag this over. And we're going to create that as a bar chart. We're going to put that right there. Expand that. And now we didn't get our estimated revenue in there. Turn that into a bar chart. And so let's do one more. Okay, we're gonna slide this over a little bit, and let's just say that I want a map here. And in the map, I want the city, and I want the estimated revenue by city. Okay, so I can drag and drop that. But I want that in a map, so I select my map button, and voila, I now have a nice little map button here. There we go. So again, I can just kind of move those around, and I can even drill into the data. So as I drill down, notice that it's kind of showing me the size of the bubble is related to the revenue. So that's pretty sweet. Let me clean that one back up there, and here, let me just do this, because that's not looking right. Let's do paste again. We want to turn that into a card, and then we want the card to get rid of that field. Okay. So we'll just keep that there, and then we'll add one more, which was, I tried to get the probability there. So let's do the probability, and we want the average probability for each of those stages. Okay, well, there, that looks prettier. Okay, so I saved this, right? So now I've got this pretty little dashboard, but you know what? I want a couple little filters here on the side. And so what I want to do there is I want to, let's do this as -2. I want to create a couple little filters here, and let's just say I want those to be the step name and the, let's say, sales rep name. So I'm going to simply drag that over into the filters table, and I can drag the step name over here too. So you just drag that over. So these are going to be filters, and if I click on it, it's going to then filter the dashboard. Okay? So now what I want to do is I want to be able to put those up into my Power BI dashboard. Now I want to save that with the rest of my team. So now I'm in my Power BI dashboard, and if I scroll down, this is where I can simply drag and drop my reports. Okay? So I'm going to go over to my dashboard here, and I'm just going to drag and drop that dashboard that I just created. Okay, so what it's doing in the background here is it's looking at those queries that I created, and it's looking at the data, and it's pulling in all that information into the portal. So once it's figured out what all those connections are and what it needs to look like on the screen and in the browser, it'll be ready to go. So now if I just click on that, we can open that up in the browser, and so now you can grab this URL here and send that to anybody on your team, and then they will be able to open up that dashboard inside a browser, and even on a mobile device it will work. So that's literally how you can create a Power BI dashboard in 15 minutes and be the hero of the day. With that, I want to thank you all for attending. We're going to open it up to some questions.
The first question that we have here is, we use Office 365, but our users mostly use the desktop version. Does this work with the desktop version of Excel?
That is exactly the version that you use. So you can use either Excel 2010 or Excel 2013. Now keep in mind that you'll have to, in 2010, you need to go out and find the Power Query add-in and probably the Power Pivot add-in, but those are available on the Microsoft site, and then Excel 2010 will work. They're all already included in Excel 2013. So you do all of your development in any version of Excel 2013.
How do you implement security on the dashboard?
Security is looking at your login credentials. Okay, so since I logged in as admin and since I opened the dashboard as admin, what that is going to do is that's looking at my credentials. So it's based upon who you're logged in and what data you have available to you. Now you can add additional security on top of that should you choose, but that's how it's kind of looking at and filtering the data and whether or not you have access to that dashboard.
Am I able to connect the online Power BI with on-prem MS CRM?
Yes. Now there's a small little caveat there in that if I do not have IFD enabled, what I have to do is create my dashboard using Excel while I'm behind my firewall, but then I save the data in the Excel spreadsheet and then I upload it to the portal. It then works perfectly fine, but what you don't get if you don't have IFD enabled is somebody has to manually refresh that, on a daily basis, let's say, and upload it to the portal again, because it can't get behind your firewall if you don't have IFD enabled. But the workaround is to do a load, refresh it, once a morning, upload it again, and now you've got refreshed data.
Could the same dashboard be loaded onto an on-prem Sharepoint form?
Good question. And yes, there is a business intelligence portal available in on-premise, but it's not called Power BI. They're reserving Power BI for the online instance of it, but you can set up your SharePoint on-premise to be able to share dashboards in much the same way that I just did with the drag and drop capability. There's a little extra work that you have to do behind the scenes with some of the what they call the BCS connectors, but yes, you can set it up in a very similar fashion with your on-premise SharePoint. Keep in mind you do need SharePoint 2010 or above, and I would really recommend SharePoint 2013 as really your baseline minimum.
Are you able to drill into the numbers in the dashboard?
Yeah, so as long as you build in any of that information, so let's just say, if I click on, for example, the qualify field, notice that it filters and drills to the qualify. If I deselect it, I say, okay, now show me how many are in the develop stage, and now there's the develop stage. So you have that filtering capability. Same thing on the map. You can drill into the maps that way, and then remember those filters that I dragged and dropped. Here's where I can do those on the right side as well, and say just show me stage 2 and stage 3, and it drills to that data as well. Okay. Now that sometimes people ask, well, that does drill to the data, but if your question was, can I drill to the CRM data or to the actual data inside of CRM, then yes, you can do that, but we have to do a little bit of additional work as far as taking one of these. Let's just say I've got the opportunity name in here as one of those fields. I would have to create a URL field that would grab the ID that would then turn that into a hyperlink to be able to navigate directly to a record inside of CRM. That is totally possible. We just didn't do it here. It will take you another probably 5 to 10 minutes to configure that field to be able to drill directly to a record inside of CRM. Or literally, if anything, not just CRM, other applications you can do the same as long as they have the ability to drill to the data by a URL.
Will using Power BI have any performance impact on dynamic CRM?
None that we've seen, and we've done some that people got millions of records in it. Now, you do want to be careful if you're going against your live production data that if you've got millions of records, you probably want to do your data loads and data refreshes, in a non-peak period. So usually you'll do it, in the early morning or in the evening, something like that, so that you don't have any impact. But by and large, we just don't see an impact because it's really no different than going out and grabbing some of the data through a view or any other advanced find or anything like that. So we just don't see any performance hits.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. And Mike?
Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time today, and hope you got something out of this, and feel free to reach out.